Welcome to my first lecture on authentication applications. Myself, I am HEMALATHA, working as an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. The outline of my today's presentation is, I'll be touching the Kerberos version 4 and version 5 and X.509 authentication service, which is most dominant in the existing internet applications. The prerequisite of understanding my today's lecture is, let me start with a few lines which you have to understand to follow up the subsequent points which I am going to refer now. So, the prerequisite for understanding the subsequent slides in my presentation of today's agenda is, you need to know what is cryptography, then symmetric crypto system, asymmetric crypto system, then the basic terminologies and the process of encryption and decryption, and the security services. Let me start with what is first cryptography. Cryptography is an area in which we focus on providing security and to achieve different security services like authentication, confidentiality, non-repudiation and integrity. And one more requirement is digital signature that will be focusing in the subsequent slides. Then under cryptography we can broadly classify the crypto systems into classical crypto systems and conventional crypto systems. Under conventional crypto systems we can classify into two popular categories. One is symmetric crypto system and asymmetric crypto system. So what is symmetric crypto system? If we look at when we use a single key, when we use a single key to provide encryption, and the same key should be used to get back the original plain text, we call it as symmetric crypto system. Asymmetric crypto system, vice versa. Yes, we need two keys. A pair of key is required to achieve confidentiality, authentication and digital signature as well non-repudiation. So here whenever we are using a pair of key for providing security services, we say it is asymmetric crypto system. Whenever we use a single key, so we can call the name of the key as either as a secret key or as a session key, that comes under symmetric crypto system. And basically the terms which is already you might have been familiar is encryption and decryption. Encryption is the process of converting a plain text to the ciphertext. What a ciphertext is? It's an unintelligible form of a plain text. And coming to the decryption, when you want to get back the original message, you always have to apply the decryption process to get back the original plain text message, which is in intelligible form, from the ciphertext. So both the encryption and decryption process must be applied wherever we are in need of security. And the different security services which will be focusing here is authentication, next is confidentiality, then third digital signature, fourth is non-repudiation. So basically we know what is authentication. Authentication is identifying yourself to anybody. For example, at the initial start of my presentation, I have identified whom I am to you. Simply it is like that. Okay, the authentication is a mechanism by which we are identifying to somebody, saying that I am so and so. So here authentication is very, very important to attain the primary primitive authentication service. So here the next is confidentiality. Confidentiality is completely hiding everything from the unauthorized access, or even if an unauthorized person is trying to access my message, he could not able to get any intelligible message through my content. So that is confidentiality, or I can say it is also called as secrecy. Then the third one is digital signature, and you might have heard about what is signature, that we normally put everywhere by using pen and paper, but that's a different one. This is the digital signature is one another thing that we can able to arrive with the support of asymmetric crypto system, where whenever the sender uses the private key of himself or herself for providing authentication and confidentiality, we can say that it is a digital signature. Then non-repudiation is denial of service. Again we can say that we can classify the non-repudiation into two categories. One is source non-repudiation and the destination receiver non-repudiation. If the source, after sending the message, and if he denies that I didn't send the message, there must be a chance or there must be a facility to prove that he is the only person who has sent the message. And in case if the receiver, after receiving the message, if he denies that he didn't receive the message, there must be a facility to prove that he is the only intended receiver who received the message and who processed it. So this is one of the important requirement what we need in order to handle all the issues whatever it happens in the cyber security. Now let me go to the presentation, into my presentation. First we'll start with the basic first authentication, what is meant by authentication application, and then I'll take you to Kerberos. Then we will look at X.509, the most dominant popular authentication service which we are using in every part of the internet, through which almost all B2B, B2C applications are happening without any problem. Let me take you to the first thing. The most widely used services is X.509 and Kerberos. Kerberos is the difference between Kerberos and X.509 is X.509 uses public key crypto system as a basic for providing the authentication service, and both the Kerberos and X.509 are third-party authentication services. First, let me start with the Kerberos, which uses a secret key authentication mechanism, which uses the symmetric crypto system, popular symmetric crypto system called data encryption standard named DES. The next crypto system, the next authentication service X.509, which is predominantly or predominant security architecture which is popular in the internet, we are using in the name of PKI, public key infrastructure. So let me start with the Kerberos, and then after I complete all the pros and the cons with respect to Kerberos, we'll see the next topic, X.509. Fine. When we come to Kerberos, you could see this is a keyhole. A keyhole is watched by a three-headed dog. It is a Greek mythology, which means there is a many-headed dog which has to act as a guardian for the entrance of Hades. So simply the same thing is going to happen in the internet in order to prevent from any kind of an attack. So here Kerberos was supposed to have basically at the time of designing the Kerberos, the requirement of the Kerberos was to attain authentication, accounting and auditing. But right now what is in the hands and what is in use is only the authentication has been implemented, and it is popular. So coming to Kerberos, Kerberos is a trusted key server system developed by Project Athena at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So what is it? Actually, it is a centralized secret key third-party authentication system in a distributed network, which allows users to access different distributed services across network without need. There is no need to trust upon all the workstations who are cooperating in any kind of cooperative access. And it is also called as a central authentication server. We have two versions right now in use. One is Kerberos version 4, another is Kerberos version 5. First of all, any project has a clear, strong requirements. First we will analyze the requirements and then we will get back to the design. The first requirement, the first published report identified its requirement as first is security. Security, you know, everything comes under security. That's what we have seen previously. Authentication, confidentiality, integrity and non-repudiation. So here security is here, and any eavesdropper should not able to get any information, any useful information out of this particular system. Next is reliability. Whoever is going to use the Kerberos system as their authentication service, it should provide the services in a reliable manner and 100% fault free. But it is not possible to provide always 100% fault free. In case even if there is any fault is going to happen, it has to ensure that the fault doesn't create any big harm to the organization whoever uses the Kerberos as the authentication service. Then coming to the transparency, as you all know, the transparency is any user should not able to understand what is happening behind it. So here transparency is the user should be unaware of the background processes, what is going on behind the application. So that is the ultimate objective in Kerberos. Next thing is scalability. Scalability is even any large number of users is going to arise at any point of time. My application should able to, that is the Kerberos should able to provide the scalable service. Identifying all these requirements, there is a motivation behind the development of this Kerberos project that provides security in a distributed architecture, which consists of a dedicated user workstations, and normally the workstations can be the clients, and we can have either the centralized or the distributed nature, and every user must have his identity in order to access each and every service whichever he wish, and every server must prove their identity to clients. So we are trying to arrive at a mutual authentication where server must authenticate first to the Kerberos authentication service, and the clients must next authenticate to the authentication service. The secure, reliable and transparent and scalable Kerberos system has been designed and it is in use. So how particularly there is a seed for every technology, and particularly for Kerberos, the seed is they use a protocol based on Needham and Schroeder. So Needham and Schroeder are the researchers who proposed a protocol for arriving at mutual authentication, and particularly this protocol has been used in the Kerberos scheme, and both the client and the servers will arrive at a mutual trust by providing mutual authentication. First we will see the overview of Kerberos version 4, and then we will identify what are all the flaws and the weakness in the Kerberos version 4, and then we will get back to the Kerberos version 5. So it's basically a third-party authentication scheme which uses only data encryption standard, that is a popular symmetric crypto system algorithm, in order to arrive at confidentiality. Next is we have two important servers called authentication server and the ticket granting server. So what is authentication server and ticket granting servers? Let me take you to the diagram first, and then so here this is, if you look at, this is the entire Kerberos design. Any system, anywhere, wherever we have the Kerberos, the Kerberos consists of two things, two servers. One is the authentication server, the other one is ticket granting server, and this authentication server is going to provide the first level of user interface to the clients, and next the ticket granting server is going to provide the credentials to access the different servers which is available in the distributed network. So here the role of the authentication server is every user, whoever he or she may be, or whatever, whether that's going to be a system or any component which is transparently taking care of authenticating anybody to any other in the internet. So let us take them as the principals or the user. User initially negotiates with AS to identify who he is. And once after, the AS provides a non-corruptible authentication credential. Here we will call that as a ticket, which again the tickets are classified into two types. One is ticket granting ticket and a service granting ticket, right? So SGT and TGT are the two terms which we'll be seeing in later. So here your authentication server initially provides TGT to the user, and once this TGT is in the hands of the user must use this TGT to access the ticket granting server to get the service granting ticket. That is the overall objective of the ticket granting server. So the user must subsequently request his access to the next to other services by contacting the service granting ticket by forwarding the TGS what he got from the authentication server. Let me come to the overall functionality. So he is the user, or I can say he is the end user, or that can be a principal. So the principal can be a component, or can be a physical user, or it can be a logical one. So here initially whenever if the user logs on to your workstation, whenever he wants to access any applications across internet, whatever it is, wherever it is and however it is. So here initially when the user logs on to the application, his request has been sent directly to the Kerberos authentication server. So here in authentication server, first whenever if the user logs on by putting his username and password to the Kerberos authentication server, the Kerberos authentication server might have already collected all the credential information from the different service providers about the users that is held in the database. So the authentication server will access the database to verify whether this user is a valid user. Once if the user is identified as a valid one, the authentication server will send a ticket along with the session key. So the ticket, what are the components of ticket, we will analyze it later, and what is being exchanged. So what is being carried from the user to the authentication server, and what has been sent from the authentication server to the user, will see it in the next slide. Then after getting the ticket and the session key, the ticket must be forwarded by the user transparently to the ticket granting server, which happens one by one in a synchronous or asynchronous fashion, right? So here ticket granting server has to verify whether this particular ticket is valid with respect to this user or not. If there is any kind of replay attack or modification attack, that can very well be identified by the TGS. Once if the TGS identifies that it's an attack, it never provides the subsequent service to the same user, even if the user keeps requesting the TGS. Once if the TGS verifies that this particular user is an authentic one, the ticket granting server will provide another ticket, which we call it a service granting ticket. So SGT. So here this SGT is particularly this ticket will be used only per type of service. One ticket will be used per type of service. If I want to access at least 3 services, then I need 3 tickets. Along with the session key, the ticket granting server will send a ticket to the user. So the ticket has to be used by this particular user in order to access the corresponding server that provides the service. So in case if the user has 3 tickets, corresponding ticket must be sent to should be forwarded to the corresponding service provider in order to avail the service. Once if the service has been once if the server verifies that the service ticket is valid one, and if it has not been attacked, the service will be immediately provided to the user. So this is what we are going to look at in detail with respect to the subsequent messages, what is being communicated in each and every interaction between the user and the authentication server, and the TGS and the user, and the user and the server. Okay. So here first we will look at the 2 versions of protocol. One is the simple authentication protocol, and after understanding the simple authentication protocol, we will come to know what are all the drawbacks in this mechanism, and we are going to arrive at a more secure authentication dialog. But this is only for theoretical purpose, which you need to understand, but we are not applying it practically at any point of time in the recent networks. So simple authentication protocol, this is actually used as in the authentication server, which knows the password. So there is a assumption every user's password must be known to a server, that is particularly the authentication server of a Kerberos. So here AS must share a secret unique key with each server. So at one side you have the servers, they will make an agreement with the Kerberos. At the other side, the Kerberos must provide the service to provide the authentication service to the end user. So whenever if a end user registers to the server, the server will assign a unique username and a password to the end user. So the same credential must be shared to the Kerberos authentication server, which is kept in a more secure location in its database. So first interaction is in the simple authentication protocol, the first interaction is a client. Client C refers to the terminologies. What is being used in this is C stands for client and A stands for authentication server, V stands for server. IDC, ID stands for identifier. The first two letters of the word identifier has been treated as a terminology over here, or I can say it's an acronym or abbreviation, identifier of the client C. So whenever if a user is identified with a different names, the corresponding identifier will come here, right? And the next thing is identifier of V. So here V refers to the server. So there are different servers which is available in the internet, which is providing different services on its own. So the name of the server will be displayed here. Instead of V, you can apply any server. So here IDV stands for the identifier of a particular server to whom you are requesting the ticket. Next is PC. PC stands for the password of the user on C. Any user will have a valid password. PC stands for the PC refers to the password of the any valid user. Then ADC is a network address of C. Here network address there are again the network address are classified into two types. One is logical IP address and the physical address. Here we are not going to use the logical address because as we all know the IP spoofing is possible when we use this logical address. So especially this ADC refers to the physical address of a machine which cannot be masqueraded at any point of time. So ADC refers to the physical address of a machine to which the client user is associated. Next KV. KV is the secret key that is shared exclusively by AS and the authentication server and the server V. So here KV is known only to the service provider, I mean the server who is going to provide the specific service to the user, and as well the authentication server. So KV is shared only between this and this. So previously all those exchanges must happen which has not been described in the slide. So initially in the simple authentication protocol, the client communicates initially to authentication server whenever if the client is interested to access any server for enjoying its service. So client will contact the authentication server by sending his identity, the password and the identity of the server from which it would like to avail the service. Then once if the authentication server verifies the IDC and the PC, he will understand that the user is requesting me to provide a granting ticket for IDV. Then AS will send back the response to C in case if all the three is valid, and he will send the same IDC has been taken from the previous message and that is appended to the next message, and in addition a ticket is attached. So what is held in the ticket we will discuss. So the ticket holds this. Actually E stands for encryption and KV stands for the secret key that is shared by AS and V. So the encryption mechanism DES is used, that is using the secret key KV to encrypt the message, the identifier of the client, the address of the client and the identifier of the server. So these three things will be concatenated together and then it will be encrypted by using DES encryption, for which they are using the secret key KV. And once this is sent back from the AS to C, C can use this as a ticket, but C cannot able to modify anything because C doesn't know the knowledge of the KV. So that is the one advantage by which C cannot able to touch anything inside the ticket for doing any kind of an attack, and C will forward this ticket only to B in order to get the service granting ticket. So this is the simple authentication protocol. Now we will go to the next version. So here the basic assumption is it uses only DES to provide authentication and confidentiality. So the uses of an authentication server is it must know all the username and the password that is stored in a database which has been acquired through the different servers and the service providers, and each and every server whichever is going to make a agreement with the Kerberos authentication service to take care of their authentication functionalities, they will share a unique secret key with each server, and they will send an encrypted ticket granting ticket, and this TGT contains a lifetime and a timestamp. Lifetime is normally used how long the TGT is going to be valid, and the timestamp can help to identify whether there is any replay attack or not. And the uses of TGS, ticket granting server. So it issues what the service granting ticket to the users who are all authenticated by AS, and every ticket is encrypted with a key that is known only to the AS and to the server V and the server TGS, and then it returns once if a encrypt, that is while doing decryption, it will verify all information with respect to the different details about the user, and then once if everything is valid and if it has identified that there is no attack, then it will return a service granting ticket. So it is called as SGT. So the service granting ticket also contains a timestamp in order to avoid replay attack, or then a lifetime, how long the ticket is going to be valid. So we'll go to the next, the more secure authentication dialog. Here we can divide the entire things into three different categories. The new protocol has three different set of communications. The first two is used once per service. So there may be different type of services. You may have mail service, you may have the file service, or you may have other video services or file downloadable service or whatever it is. Every server is going to have its own authentication mechanism, and each server will have a different identifier. But any user cannot use a single username and a password to access all servers at any point of time. So for each and every service, you need once per service. So only one time a ticket will be provided for a service per service. So what is it is, the client communicates to the authentication server by sending its identifier and the identifier of the ticket granting server. So this once after the AS comes to analyze who is IDC and whether the ID TGS is valid or not, and then the AS will send back another ticket which is encrypted by using DES, by using the secret key KC. So here ticket TGS, the components of ticket TGS are, that is the message composed of identifier of the client, physical address of the client machine, the identifier of the ticket granting server, the timestamp 1 and the lifetime 1. So the lifetime 1 will be validated every time whenever if the client is going to use the TGS, I use this ticket in order to approach the TGS again and again for getting a different service granting ticket. In case if the lifetime is invalid, there is no validity for this ticket, the client has to reapply again in order to get a new ticket, and this timestamp 1 will give the information about at what time this particular ticket must have reached this client by authentication server. So this is the and entirely everything together is encrypted by the secret key that is shared by the TGS and the authentication server. So that you call it as KTGS, and E stands for encryption. Next, once per type of service. Now we are coming to the per session. Now from previously we have seen per service session. Now we are going to see per type of service. So there are different services in which user may be requesting the TGT, but the service provider must acquire the corresponding service granting ticket. The user must acquire the service granting ticket in order to access the different services based on his need. So the client will has to approach the ticket granting server by sending his identity, the identity of the server, that is IDV, and the ticket TGS which has been collected previously in the previous exchange from AS. Now on receiving this, TGS must verify the content of IDC and this is same, And next is to which server it is requesting for, and the timestamp one and the lifetime one has to be identified and verified whether it is valid or not. Then one more thing, without knowing that the without knowing to see that TGS will verify the ADC, what TGS will do now, the ADC of the value of ADC present inside the ticket TGS will be validated with the original ADC that is generated along with the message from client to TGS. By this way, it could able to understand that whether that is an attack or not. Now, once if that is all valid, if the ADC that is held in the ticket and the ADC that is the physical address that comes from the client side, if it is equal, the ticket is identified as a valid and it doesn't understand, there is no, or I can say that there is no attack. Then TGS can contact back to C by sending another ticket V. Now this is the service granting ticket. This is actually the ticket granting ticket and this is a service granting ticket. So here the service granting ticket contains the identifier of the client, the physical address of the client, identifier of the server, then the new timestamp 2. The timestamp is nothing but it is the time at which this particular ticket has been generated, has been attached along with the message. Then new lifetime and how long this ticket V is valid, that is going to be held in the new lifetime 2. And this is held inside ticket V and that is sent to the client C. Then finally coming to the last message exchange in the Kerberos communication, as the client will contact the server V by submitting the ticket V along with the identifier of the client. So the identifier of the client must be attached in order to verify by V whether it is only the sender C is sending the ticket or somebody is doing any masquerading, so that if it is a masquerading, then the server V will deny to provide the service to client C. This is on the whole the summary. Client to AS and AS to C, and this is the messages that it is being communicated. This we have seen already. And next is, first is authentication. These two is authentication service exchange to obtain the ticket granting ticket. Next, for ticket grant to obtain the service granting ticket, you need to communicate from C to TGS and then TGS to C. So the TGS, finally what you get from TGS by C is the service granting ticket, or I can say ticket V. The ticket V, in addition we have that authenticator, where the authenticator is held inside the message. Inside the message, what is communicated from C to TGS. So what is communicated from C to TGS is, it has the IDC, identifier of the client, the physical address of the client and the timestamp 3. So this timestamp 3 has been newly generated by the client C in order to avoid replay attack. Then finally when we come to the client server authentication exchange to obtain a service from a particular service providing server, so the C will approach the server, that is the server is K, by sending the ticket V, that is service granting ticket, and the authenticator C. And if we analyze what is held in this authenticator C, it is same thing what we have seen before, but except the timestamp. The timestamp must be newly generated every time whenever if the client is going to use the ticket for subsequent interactions in order to avail service. So here authenticator service will be encrypted between a shared secret key by C and V. C stands for the client and V stands for the server, and where the message contains the identifier of the client, address of the client and the new timestamp, and this is attached to the ticket V, and that is sent to the server, where the server will verify whether this IDC and this IDC are equal, and the address from which the machine is forwarding this request, and the address that is held in the ticket is more or less same, or it must be equal, and this timestamp should be greater than this TS4. And in addition, the lifetime 4 will also be verified to ensure whether the ticket is valid or outdated. Then once if this is over, the last interaction is only the new timestamp, the TS, and normally we have already seen that there are three-way communications. The last is only an acknowledgement. So your TS5 the timestamp value 5 is taken from the authenticator, but through, and that is added to 1, and this will act like a final exchange between the server and the provider. And this is all what I have explained. I'm keeping here this, I'm keeping this here for your understanding. So now coming to the Kerberos realm. So every Kerberos environment consists of a Kerberos server. This is a physical machine that contains an authentication server and that is a logical component, an authentication server and a TGS, ticket granting server, and a number of clients all are registered with a valid server, and different application servers that shares keys with the servers. What is a realm? Realm is a set of managed nodes that share the same Kerberos database. Then coming to Kerberi, so the plural form of Kerberos is Kerberi. The Kerberos server in each realm shares a secret key with one another. So each and every Kerberos server will share a secret key with each other, so that they'll form a cooperative virtual environment. Then there must be a trust between the servers. Whenever if there are n servers, n plus 1 number of messages must be communicated in order to establish trust. And each server are registered with one another, and this is the reason why Kerberos does not scale well. And this is a small scenario if more different client is approaching a different server which comes under different realm. So every realm has a Kerberos server, a number of clients and a number of server. So in this scenario, let us take, we have two realms, one is A, another one is B. So here the client belongs to realm A and the server belongs to realm B. Here comes the problem. So here the client doesn't know to which realm the server belongs to. So what he does, the client automatically contacts the local server, local Kerberos server, and he doesn't know that the client is contacting the local because everything is transparent. And the client is requesting the ticket from the Kerberos, local Kerberos server, for which your AS will provide the ticket. This is actually the TGT, ticket granting ticket. And the client uses the ticket granting ticket to TGS, and thereby he returns back the service granting ticket. Now the service granting ticket is forwarded to the remote Kerberos server, where the AS doesn't come into the picture over here, because since this client has been already verified by the server, which is by the Kerberos server that is present in realm A, it doesn't do the same old message exchanges with a different AS in the different realm. So instead, the service granting ticket will be used by the client in order to contact the remote TGS, where the remote TGS will issue a remote ticket, will issue a ticket for a remote server, and that particular ticket must be utilized for enjoying the remote service. So this is with respect to the distributed Kerberos environment. So there are certain problems in Kerberos version 4, and thereby we are going to look at the version 5. And the new elements, what has been introduced in version 5 is the concept of realm. You know that everywhere we are having the distributed network. In each and every distributed network we have the different authentication servers. Everywhere we have the set of realms, and there are different options, times and nonce. Nonce is nothing but number used once. So number used once. So number n stands for the first letter of number, and once has been attached together to form this acronym called nonce. And next thing is client server authentication exchange. The simple thing what they are is introduced inside the client server authentication exchanges is subkeys are going to be used, and every time a new sequence number will be generated whenever if a new message is going to be generated from the client to the server, as well from the server to the client. And the flags are being introduced. So here authentication forwarding is introduced in version 5, and the user server authentication dialogues are made better, because every time whenever we use a subkey, there is a chance there is a very less chance, or I can say that it is infeasible for an attacker to execute a brute force attack, because the problem with an DES is the brute force attack is possible. What is brute force attack? Brute force attack is trying out all possible keys to break the cipher to get back the original message. But with the current computational resources, it is possible and it has been proven that any person, whoever has the higher computational resource, can able to break the cipher that has been encrypted using DES. So because of that, we are generating a sub key for each and every session, and this sub key is going to be unique. And next is in general we can say it's called as delegation, or delegation otherwise called as forwarding. So here server can access other servers on user's behalf. So in the previous slide, let us assume that here you have a server, and let's take this particular client have got a ticket only to access this server, but this server can in turn access another server that is kept in the same realm or in the other realm too. And inter-realm authentication is possible. So inter-realm authentication is this realm, the Kerberos server in realm A should authenticate to Kerberos server in realm B, and they will make some exchanges to share their secret keys. And explicit integrity checking, you know what is integrity? The message what is sent should be received as it is by the receiver. In case if there is any changes or alterations made in the middle, then it must be possible for the receiver to find out there is an attack, and he should not able to subsequently process the message. Instead, that should be discarded. And since we are using DES, so here cipher block chaining mode can be used in order to avoid the problem of getting the same ciphertext for the same plain text. And next, multiple encryption schemes are incorporated in Kerberos version 5 without depending on DES alone. Here, the practical uses of Kerberos in which platforms we are using Kerberos in turn is one is Microsoft Windows and email servers, file transfer protocol, and the file transfer. File servers and file transfer protocols are employed with the Kerberos. Network file systems, then many other applications have also been Kerberized. So use of Kerberos, since the use of Kerberos is going to be transparent for the end users, this becomes a popular one. And next thing is local authentication is possible with the OpenBSD, and authentication for network protocols and secure windowing system. The strengths are the passwords are never sent across in an unencrypted form, or I can say the passwords are not sent in clear form. Everywhere we are providing at least double level encryption system in order to arrive at confidentiality, and the clients and applications are getting authenticated mutually, so there is no chance for somebody to masquerade like other, and the tickets have a limited lifetime, so replay attack is not possible. And next thing is authentication through AS will happen only once, so this makes more convenient for the users to use the Kerberos. Then shared secret keys are used between the clients and the services, that is found to be more efficient than depending on the public key infrastructure. And many of the implementations do support Kerberos, and that's why it has been adapted as a base, and which has undergone a serious testing. And the authenticators created by clients can only be used once, and that is going to serve one more level. And coming to every system has got its own strengths and weaknesses. Now let me focus upon the weaknesses of the Kerberos. And Kerberos provides only authentication. That's what we have seen in the first slide or in the third slide. We have concentrated the requirement are the integrity, authorization and authentication, but finally only authentication was possible with Kerberos. So that's the first weakness. Then the second is, since it uses only DES, brute force attack is possible. So our brute force attack is trying out all possible keys, and when we are using the simple DES, the maximum possible number of keys that an attacker should try is only 2 power 56 minus 1. So that is the only weakness in this. Then the principal key database has to be hardened. Actually every KDCs, every key distribution centers do have the servers where they have a copy of all the keys that is shared between the Kerberos server and the different servers, as well the clients, and that should be hardened through some mechanisms. Like any security tool, this is also vulnerable to users, because whenever if a user chooses a poor password. Next we will look at the X.509. Next we are going to look at the next dominant popular authentication service named X.509 or In short, we can call it as public key infrastructure or PKI. So X.509 has been devised with the support of X.500, which is a directory service where the distributed servers do maintain their user information database in the directory services. Where your X.500 will already define a framework for authentication services, where each and every directory may store public key certificates and with the public key of a user signed by the certification authority. X.509 is a popular public key crypto system where that is used for providing public key cryptology and the digital signature, and the algorithms are not standardized even though, but still RSA are popularly widely used and the digital signature standard. Then X.509 certificates are widely used. Public key certificate or each and every public key certificate is associated with the user, and this particular certificate has been generated by the trusted certificate authority. Certification authority, in short, we can call it a CA, where each and every CA, the role of CA has to issue certificates to the end user, whoever is requesting the server, CA on demand. So the notation in general, the CA stands for the name of the certificate authority and A is the name of the user to whom the certificate has been issued. Certificate for a client A is signed by the CA. So we have different versions, version 1, 2 and 3, and 3 and 2 is in use and 1 has become obsolete. Serial number, each and every certificate has a serial number which identifies that it is a certificate, and each and every certificate has a signature algorithm identifier. So this algorithm identifier can help the end users or can help the end user machine to identify which algorithm it has to choose in order to take the public key and the private key of a user, so that can be used for the subsequent interactions between the user and the server. And next is the name of the issuer. Then the period of validity, again the certificate has a valid period between from date and to particular date. Then every particular certificate has a every certificate has associated to a subject, and the name of the subject is attached to here. Then the subject public key information. Public key information must contain, or I can say this is a suit where it has to specify which algorithm it is using, what are all the parameters and the corresponding key. Then the issuer, a unique identifier. Every issuer has unique identifier which is supported only in version 2 or above. And next is every subject is provided with a unique identifier which is available only version 2 and above. Then there are different extension fields that is supported only in version 3. Next is signature. Signature will see a small diagram in which how a signature has been generated. So let me come to the structure of a certificate. So this is the structure of the certificate, and that is the structure of the revocation list. Since every certificate has a particular period of time, whenever if any certificate is involved in any malpractice during the period of time, the certificate will be revoked by the certificate authority transparently, and once the name of every certificate authority has to publish a certificate revocation list, or in short we can call it a CRL. So the CRL must contain the set of certificate serial numbers and the corresponding revocation date. So whenever if any server is receiving a certificate, the certificate must be validated with a revocation list in order to ensure whether the certificate is valid or not. Let me come to the parts of the certificate, where the first field contains the version, so that can be a valid version 1, 2 or 3. Next is every certificate will have a unique serial number, and this serial number will be generated only by the certificate authority. Next, the signature algorithm identifier, we will see how the signature is generated basically, and there are different algorithms using which we can able to create a signature, and this particular portion of information will hold the details about which algorithm the CA has used for generating the signature and what are all the parameters. Next is the name of the certificate, or name of the issuer who issues the certificate. Then how long the certificate is valid. So not before will have the date, starting date, and not after will have the closing date. Then the name of the subject to whom this particular certificate is issued. Then the corresponding subject's public key information will be held subsequently next to the name of the subject. So the algorithm, which algorithm it has used, and the corresponding parameters and the key.
then every issuer will have a unique identifier that is kept at the end, every subject will have a unique identifier that is kept at the end, and the extensions is an additional, then corresponding signature is attached at the end. So if you look at from here till here, it is covered in version 1. For version 2, from version till the subject unique identifier is available in X.509 version 2. In X.509 version 3, from version till up to the extensions, and this is applicable for all versions, whether it is version 1 you have this, version 2 you have this, and for version 3 is also you have this. And the certificate revocation list, this is again the same information what we have seen here, and the issuer name, name of the issuer, name of the certificate authority who issued the certificate revocation list must be displayed here, and how long the CRL is valid. So this update date and the next update date, when it was updated and when it has to be updated will be specified here. So again it serves as a period of validity by which every authority or every server will verify first these two dates in order to ensure whether the CRL itself is stale or not. In case if the CRL is fresh, by looking at this date and the next update date, in case if the date at which the server is going to verify if it falls between this and this, anyway they will consider that as a valid one. And the next is this portions from here till here, this is all the set of revoked certificates. Each and every revoked certificate will have two information. One is the corresponding user certificate serial number is held here, and next is from which date or exactly on which date it has been revoked has kept here, and subsequently the same pair of information will be displayed for each and every certificate where your serial number is going to be unique. And the last three parameters is going to be the signature, or I can say this information, this last three fields is going to be the signature, which will serve that it is not attacked. So let me come to the process of signing. Initially you assume that this is the unsigned certificate. I am coming to the part of what is the signing process involves. So here H stands for the hash algorithm. Here we have two popular protocols what we are using. One is message digest 5, or the other one is secure hash algorithm to provide signing, or I can say to provide integrity. In addition, the digital signature can also be attained by using either MD5 or SHA-1. So initially your input is going to be your unsigned certificate, which contains the user ID and the user's public key. So the certificate is going to be sent as an input to the hash function, where your hash function will generate the hash code of an unsigned certificate. A new hash value will be generated, and there is a meaning for giving the shape to this particular portion of the diagram, because if the user certificate size is going to be several kilobytes, but still the hash value is going to be the size fixed, or the size of the hash code is going to be fixed. So that's why this is broader and this is smaller, because the size of the unsigned certificate is always greater than the size of the hash value. And then the output of the hash function is something like this, or you cannot able to find out how this hash value can be generated, because all the hash functions are going to be going to satisfy three properties. One is collision resistance and one-way hash function, and then is your hash value must be encrypted in order to provide secrecy to the hash value, so that further it cannot be attacked by using any of the public key crypto system and using the private key of the sender. So whenever if any portion of the message is signed by using any encryption algorithm which uses the private key of the sender, thereby we can achieve the digital signature. So the output of this encryption algorithm is a digital signature, where this digital signature is appended to the original message. So this is what we talk here. So this portion is referred to this portion. So the signed certificate becomes the original certificate and the hash code of the certificate that is attached, and this is the entire process of signing. And one another way, so any message you can take, you can calculate the hash code, and you can encrypt the hash code with the private key of the sender, since this serves as a digital signature, and once that is embedded into a particular document. So whenever if a document is attached with a hash code which is encrypted with the private key of the sender, this you call it as a digitally signed document, and this is a digital signature. So this this will be sent forwarded, or I can say that this is sent as it is to the receiver in a secure channel, where the new hash code is computed and the old hash code is taken, and the receiver, at the receiver end, they will check whether the calculated hash code is equal to the original hash code. In case if it is not equal, they can come to understand that there is an attack. If it is equal, it means that there is no attack. And let me come to the final part of my presentation, that is certificate revocation. Every certificate have a period of validity, and which may need to, in case if any certificate has undergone any malicious activity, then such certificate will be revoked without informing to the subject. So here there is a chance to revoke a certificate before it expires. So the user's private key, whenever if the user's private key is compromised because of any reason, there is a chance, or if the user is no longer certified by this user, if the CA wants to withdraw the certificate from the user, then that is the second case. The CA certificate, in case if the CA certificate is already compromised by other means, the third the third is applicable to the point of attack that happens at CA. Every CA must maintain a list of revoked certificate, which we call it a certificate revocation list or CRL, and every user must check the CRL before they accept that the certificate is valid or not. So coming to the CA hierarchy, this is every oval represents its certificate authority, and set of certificate authorities comes under another authority at the one level up. So this is hierarchy. So C and A belongs to the authority X. So what X will do? X will create a certificate for C and issue. So the X is the name of the issuer and C is the name of the client which possesses the certificate, and here X is the name of the issuer who issued the certificate to A, and A is the identity of A. C and A in turn, they can be the certificate authorities to issue the subsequent other certificates to the people below. Okay, then at the other side, when we look at X is associated with one more authority called W, where W is an authorized person who gave rights to X in order to issue certificates to the people at the lower level. So the chain goes like this, and this is what we are applying in a distributed network. So there are different authentication procedures: one-way authentication, two-way authentication, and three-way authentication. So all these mechanisms uses only public key signatures. So the final part of my presentation, one-way authentication, is A will exchange to B, identifying who it is by sending the timestamp and the corresponding signed data and the public key of the B, which is actually the public key of B is used by A, and using which A is generating a secret key between A and B, and that is encrypted. So whenever if A would like to make some exchange with B, the process involved is A must acquire the certificate of B from any authority, and he has to take the public key of B, and the public key of B must be used for providing the secrecy to the secret key. So the secret key is KAB, and KAB is encrypted with the public key of B, and that is attached to the rest of the messages, and that is being sent from A to B. In case if both the principals require mutual or two-way authentication, A has to send a message. So A is the initiator, the same thing is applicable here. And once if B identifies that somebody is interested to make some communication with me, he inquires who that is by sending his own identity and the corresponding signed data, and he takes the public key of A, and thereby he is creating a new secret key that we call it as KBA, and that is being encrypted again. And this is two-way authentication, where A authenticates to B and B authenticates to A. And then finally three-way authentication is This is again a challenge response model. So challenge is 1 and 2 is a challenge and 3 is a response. So for whenever if we are talking with respect to this scenario, for A 1 is the challenge and 2 is the response. For B 2 is the challenge and 3 is the response. So this you call it as a three-way authentication. So in the last response, in the last challenge response model, the final value what the A will use now, only the RB component alone will be used for performing this challenge response model. So the extension X.509 version 3 provides extension identifier, criticality indicator and the extension value. And on the whole, every public key infrastructure will have a public key users at one side, public key PKI management entities at the other side. So PKI management entities are the authorities who can officially appoint certificate authorities who can issue CRL or who can issue certificates to the end users. So here you have the registration authority and the end entity. At the PKI user sites you have the end entity. At the PKI management entity side we have the certificate authority, then the CRL issuer and the registration authority. So anybody who would like to get a certificate must come through the registration authority. So the PKI user through the end entity can approach the registration authority in order to register himself, so that the certificate authority will publish or will hand over a unique certificate, and as well the certificate authorities can have the cross certification possibilities, and each and every certificate authority must have their own CRL issuers, where the CRL issuers take care of issuing the CRLs periodically. So on the whole, coming to the last part of my presentation, we have three different certificates. One is conventional certificates, or I can say it is a long-lived certificate, where the long-lived certificate will have a period of validity where the period is very high. It will range from months to years. And next is short-lived certificate, only for a duration of a particular short time the certificate is going to be valid, and this is especially used only in grid and as well as in cloud computing too. And then proxy certificates is one more type of certificate which has been strongly adapted only in the domain of grid computing but not in a general environment. So finally, in my presentation we have seen the Kerberos version 4 and 5, its strengths and weaknesses, X.509 certificates, and how a digital signature has been generated, and we have seen how we can arrive the one-way authentication and the mutual authentication by using these authentication protocols. Thank you very much.